It's a beautiful mid-January day down here at the river. And last week we had some very heavy rains. And I always like to come down to this little spot and see what flood gold might have been brought in during the rain. And so we're going to take a peek here at what the riverbank looks like and how it may have changed from about a month ago when I was down here last. The first thing that I notice is that this area right here is new. It wasn't this high before, and you can see the vegetation off to the left. That's about the height of where this was, and there was vegetation across here. So we have some new gravel, and ordinarily this is the normal course of the river, but when it does get high and it floods, the river makes a turn here, and we're always looking for that place where the river turns to find the gold that dropped out. And I can see that the little sucker trees that have been growing here the last couple of years are covered in debris, so it tells me again the river was up high. And in fact, if you look at this level here, you can sort of see it's actually higher than there, and that was really kind of the height of where it was before. But we do see some buildup. Now I'm going to check right on the front edge of this area here where the water would have slowed down as it washed up against this little debris dam. But also you can see the water flowed fast enough that it cut out this area, carved it out, and then left a high area in the back. That's where the eddy would have been. Now ordinarily, with all this sand here, I would say that the tan sand is almost never where you find the gold. Usually the tan sand drops out of the water before, or rather after, the black sand and the gold does. So I wouldn't expect really to find gold in here, except that this sand may have come in a different sort of flow when the water began to really slow down as it drained lower. So I am going to try this little raised spot right here. And we're always looking for indicators of the current carrying things that are heavy, and so we look here. I do see a big piece of iron, but I know from experience that that was here earlier, and it looks like someone may have just found that and dropped it there, so that's not much of a sign. But around this debris dam, again, I do see some old choker setter cable back from the old logging days, and some here as well. And despite the fact that there's tan sand in there, I'm going to still give that a little look. And lastly, I also see this debris dam that would have slowed the water down, and I noticed that it's raised right in the middle here. So this may be a good place to look. It's carried some rocks and a pretty good sized little boulder here, a couple of them actually stacked up against each other. Might be an indicator of a place where gold would have dropped out. So we'll give that a shot and see how we do. I also see, lastly, in this corner of the debris dam, some more debris, a metal, flat piece of metal, and a choker cable. That's probably been stuck there for a while though. But we'll check in through here and see what last week's rain might have brought us. First spot we're going to try is in front of this little debris dam, and I'm just looking more closely at the rocks, and I see these little teeny suckers that were growing at one time. And we're going to take a peek and see how far they're buried, just to make sure that not looking at an optical illusion and digging in a place that's really not fresh gravel. So as I dig back, I'm trying to just move the rocks, make it toward where the base of this is. And pretty clearly this was covered with several rocks. So this, and I don't know how far down this goes, but it looks to me like it's been covered a bit. So I think it's a safe bet that this is fresh rock and therefore maybe fresh gold. So we'll give it a shot. As I'm digging in this area, I'm just kind of pulling the bigger rocks off the surface, taking a look at what's underneath. And quite a bit of mix in here. It's not solid sand, there's gravel, and that's good. So we'll take some of that gravel, and typically what I'll do is I'll just show you my pan here. I've got my gold pan, and I have two different levels of classifiers, my finer and my more coarse. I think that's 1/4 inch maybe on top. And I'll take my gravel and I'll put it in here. And I'll end up filling this up about across the top, take it to the water, submerge it, and then shake it back and forth to end up with just the fine sand. I know in this area there are no pieces of gold that are any bigger than that smaller mesh that's in there, just from experience, so I can use that smaller mesh safely. Okay, so I'm just again scooping some of this gravel in here. Now I don't want to go too deep, because really I need to figure out at what layer has the gold been deposited, because it's not going to be all the way through here. If we're looking for flood gold, that gold's going to drop out at a certain speed that the water's traveling. And so if I go too deep, I'm not going to hit gold, or too shallow, I'm not going to hit gold. So I'm really, as we are prospecting, we're testing layers. So I'll take a broader area at about down to about 3 inches and try that and see how it looks. And then I'll go another 3 inches down. And then if I find no gold in either layer, then I'll move to the left or to the right, because that's the other thing about gold dropping out of a river, is a lot of times it drops out parallel to either the river or to where the river was turning. And so we may find a streak over here where we don't find a streak here. And so we'll be prospecting this area to start with. Taking that full classifier and shaking it out in the water. These are my larger, these are my smaller, and it leaves me just with that little bit of sand. And so we will go ahead and give that a pan down and see what we find in there. Okay, we're working on panning this down. I'm doing this one-handed so I can film. Basically going to put some water in there, and I would be shaking this back and forth with both hands like a steering wheel, very fast, for about a minute, and then typically shaking it backwards and then forwards a little bit, giving it another shake. In this case, I'm going to be kind of aggressive. I know that according to physics, the black sand will be underneath all this, and the gold will be in the black sand. Since I'm just prospecting here, and because I'm trying to get this on film, I'm going to go ahead and do it kind of aggressively. Alright, still working on it. Now I built myself a little bit of a dam here, just basically to cut down on the speed of the water, because that can wash the sand and interfere with your panning. So every little bit I'll wash off the brown sand, then I'll take it and shake it back, get things settled into that little corner groove there, that little flat groove, and you can start to see the black sand appearing now in the corners. That's your sign you want to start being a little more careful. Sometimes you'll even see the gold appear, if there's gold, in those little black sand corners. So after our first pan in this area, and only getting that one little piece of very fine, what we call flour gold or fly poop, we're digging in the same spot, but I'm going down another couple of inches, and you can see by these little suckers that have been here, we're not even getting close to the root ball. So this is, at least several inches, if not a couple of feet worth of fresh gravel. So we'll go down a bit here and give it a try. Okay, we've gone down about 6 inches. It's our next 3-inch layer, and we've got a little bit here in the pan. We'll go shake it out and see what we get. This is our second pan after we have classified it in the water. Now, you might notice some of these shinier stones, and a lot of times if you find a bunch of these in the area that you're working, that can also be an indicator that heavier rock is dropping out in that particular place you're digging, because these tend to be more dense and heavier than these types of rocks. So that's what we're looking for. Maybe it can be just one indicator. So we've got our little bit of smaller classified gravel. Again, not worried about throwing this out, because been here many times, never seen anything close to that size of a piece of gold. I always check it before I dump it anyway. But here's what we're left with. This little bit of sand that we're going to go ahead and pan out now. Alright, we're working our way down toward, this is our second pan again. Just working on washing out that top debris. A few washes, shake it back down, shake it forward, let that black sand stay in that groove. circular motion in and out of the water, not completely out, just enough to wash away that top level. Now I'm going to shake it back again. Circular motion. I'm starting to see my black sand now in the corners here, so I want to be careful. In fact, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and turn this around, put some water in here. I'm going to shake this whole thing this direction. Now the black sand's showing. But I want to shake it back and forth so I reclassify, if you will, the heavier rock, heavier granules, including the gold, toward the bottom. And now I'll just give it a little wash. Wash off that tan sand. Shake it back. Shake it forward. Give her a wash. Alright. Shake it back. Shake her forward. And I shook it a little bit too much. I got my black sand toward the front part of the pan. We don't want that to be the case. Alright. I'm getting enough down into the black sand. I'm going to go ahead and put some water in here. We'll shake it and we'll give it a little swirl, see if we found any gold in there. Not looking very promising. Nope. We know that we did a decent job panning because we got mostly the black sand at the bottom, but there's just no gold 6 inches down in that particular spot that I dug. So we're going to keep prospecting. Next spot we're going to check is this one I pointed out earlier where we have these rocks kind of piled up. And imagine this river turned right toward us. You see how the trees are pushed down. That indicates that it did travel that way. And also we have kind of a raised area from that little tree right past my gold pan, right past these big rocks, kind of ending right here. And it's raised, so this is going to be deposited debris that deposited as the river slowed ever so slightly and continued to sort of turn and go through here. So we're going to try around this bigger rock and move on from there if we don't get any good indicators. Well, we've rolled our big rock out of the way and we've dug kind of around and under it, down into the sand there, and we've got ourselves some gravel and we're going to give it a shot. Nothing about this sand that looks any different than the other two prospect holes that we dug, but we'll give it some shaking and see what we find. Okay, I've panned it down to enough that I can flip it on the other side, but really there's not nearly as much black sand in this pan as there were the other ones, and so never want to give up hope, but I'm a little bit skeptical as to where they'll find gold in here, but you never know until you carefully process that last little bit. Okay, we're just about ready to just give it a little swirl in the pan and take a peek, and if there is gold in here, it's worth snuffing up. We'll pan it some more. Oh, I see a little piece. Can it show up there? Right there in the center of the screen. Little tiny piece. So let's give it a little swirl here and see if there's anything more in there. You see that one piece of gold just kind of sticking to the bottom. And it is not looking very promising. Well, one little speck there, so it'd be worth checking some more in that area. I usually stay away from the tan sand because it's so light and doesn't tend to settle with the gold. But I do see that this raised area may have created kind of a channel where high velocity water traveled through here and off to the sides of that high velocity water. The sand can settle, and in the middle this tends to be where gold will continue through unless the water slows a bit and drops out the heavier materials. And I notice here that there's a piece of steel cable buried right in here, and I'm going to give that area a little probing and prospecting, and we'll see what we find. This is the area where that piece of metal was laying, that small piece of cable, and that's my pan, and let's see what we find. This is the last little bit from that area, the first pan, where we saw that little steel cable, and just saving you the watching of the panning piece. We're down to this last little bit of black sand. I'm not seeing anything. We'll give it a little shake here and a swirl. We'll find out together. And we find not even a little speck. This is why we call it prospecting. But one of the things that I failed to notice is this area that I first dug in that clearly has several inches of new gravel. I didn't look closely enough at the area next to it, and now I'm looking here and I see these are trees or suckers that have been here for quite some time. And if I stand it up, you can see how deep that root would have gone down, and kind of where that first branch is where the gravel was here in this area. So what we're actually looking at here is an area that has been carved out, not deposited by the water. And that area there, yes, some depositing up there. We'll have to give that another look. But I have to wonder if the water traveled fast enough through here to carve this out, if I shouldn't look a little further down where the water would have slowed down. So that's what we'll try next. Looking back on that little debris dam that we've been working around and off to the one on this side, standing in what I'm going to speculate is a bit of a channel that got carved out. Now I have in years past been in here and actually found some pretty big flakes of gold in this area. Of course it wouldn't be here now, but it does tell me that there can be a dynamic with the river where the gold does get deposited right in through here, perhaps just before the river or this offshoot of the river turns that corner. So I'm going to try this, just the surface of this semi-raised area in what I think may have been a flood channel. Haven't gone too deep, just a few inches, and we're going to take that gravel and give it a wash. Take it on back over there. Well, we're going to try something new together here. There's the river. The last place I dug is in at the front edge there of what I was calling this flood channel. Now this area here is carved out a bit. Also very muddy, covered in mud, which indicates slow moving water. You don't want to dig where there's mud right on top of the rocks generally in looking for flood gold. But we don't want to discount the possibility that this really was flowing through significantly. I mean, we did move a lot of rock from there somewhere, and perhaps this mud is from as the water slowed down. I do see some rocks built up kind of in here, and I've never dug back in here before. Well, one time, my very first time here, and found nothing. But I'm going to give it another try since there is a pile of rocks here, and so far we're not hitting any little sweet spots. We'll see what happens. Alright, this is the last little bit left in that pan from that last little spot that we tested, and I think, oh yeah, okay, we've got one flake. That's, you know, that's not a, I wouldn't call it a big flake, but that's something. Kind of work that. Oh, I see another little guy in there. See, yeah, that's about all we got in there. There was another little guy that washed in here somewhere, but the fact that we found a bigger piece, certainly not what I would consider a big piece, but the biggest piece we found so far, plus a second small little piece of flour gold in that spot, I would say we're going to go back and give it a shot, but we're losing daylight, so it'll be a different day. We'll take you back to that spot and show you what we find there on a different video. So I guess all we'll say for this the little prospecting trip is about 2 hours, including the time to hike out to the spot and to prospect several different areas, and then to hike back. Is not a bad little trip to scope out an area that changes every time we have a heavy rain, and to figure out where the gold is moved to. So hopefully you picked up some tips on prospecting and panning a little bit, and we'll share more next time we head out.